Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. It's 11 a.m. My name is Brian Beam. I'm Calcasieu Parish Administrator. And this is the Calcasieu Parish public briefing for the May 2021 flooding event. This, of course, came upon us yesterday. We experienced a significant flooding event here in Calcasieu Parish, and of course it's hit in other areas of the state as well. Heavy rains fell throughout many areas of the parish, causing a great deal of street flooding, and unfortunately many homes and businesses were flooded as well. Today we will have summaries of what occurred yesterday in terms of the weather, the impacts from that weather, and the status of sheltering operations. And we'll have a look ahead as well, and we'll hear from some of our elected leaders. We will begin with a report on the weather. We are fortunate to have the National Weather Service here today, Andy Patrick, who does a great job for them, and he's here to give an update and what has occurred as well. Andy?
Thank you, Brian. Of course, very much a record day yesterday. We were just reviewing amounts here early this morning, and I can tell you, and this is typical of a lot of rainfall events, significant rainfall events across this area, across Louisiana, particularly with tropical cyclones. But in particular, we were just talking rainfall amounts here earlier, and like the northwest part of the parish generally had anywhere from 5 to 10 inches. But when you got south of Lake Charles, that's where you got into the higher amounts. Some of the higher amounts, particularly between the Lake Charles Regional Airport and McNeese Avenue, was in the 16 to 18 inch range. So no doubt when you have that amount of rainfall in a very short period of time, and this was generally in a 6-hour time frame, there's going to be a lot of bad flooding issues regardless. So we are anticipating, as far as what's going to happen in the future, many of you have kind of noticed, fortunately a lot of the rain further south has stayed there during the morning hours. We're expecting some increase in shower and thunderstorm activity during the early part of the afternoon. But fortunately, we think a disturbance is going to push that rain further to the northeast. So I think by late afternoon and into much of the overnight hours, I believe we're going to see a fairly benign type weather pattern, probably little, if any, shower and thunderstorm activity. We are expecting another disturbance to roll through probably close to daybreak, perhaps a few hours earlier into southwest Louisiana, and could certainly bring another round of heavy rainfall. And a second round is expected about 12 hours later into the afternoon. So we're thinking as far as additional rainfall amounts, and we're going to say this is through Thursday, 4 to 6 inches. One thing to keep in mind again, though, is, and this is true with a lot of our heavy rain events, there's going to be a very relatively small area that's going to have a lot more than that, could be double. And so we're kind of thinking it's definitely not conceivable to think we're going to have another 10 to 15 inches. Now that could be just anywhere in central, southwest, or south central Louisiana. We just don't know where these heavy rain bands are going to set up. So that's just something to keep in mind during the day tomorrow. We do think the rain chances, or at least the chance for more organized excessive rain, will lessen as we head into Thursday and Friday. That doesn't mean we're not going to have any showers or thunderstorms that could provide additional localized flooding, but we think that, at least as far as the rainfall is concerned, the bulk of that we think will end probably Wednesday, if not, Wednesday could be the soonest, but certainly by Thursday, end of day Thursday, we think the bulk of the heavy rain threat will end for southwest Louisiana. Now, as far as what's happening along the rivers, the lower Calcasieu White Oak Park will likely remain in major flood category for at least, we think, through the end of the week. One thing to keep in mind too, and this is true with the Sabine River, the lower Sabine River as well, we're going to be having increasing onshore winds, and that will likely prevent a lot of drainage. So expect any levels along the lower Calcasieu, the lower Sabine River, to probably fall very slowly. And that doesn't necessarily even take into account any additional rainfall that may fall upstream as well. So are there any questions?
You mentioned a record day. Record in terms of what? Total rainfall, or how do you compare it?
Well, I'll have to get back as far as what it is relative, but this is definitely a daily record, and I think it's some of the, at least if you take into account the volume of flooding, the magnitude of flooding, we certainly had quite a bit of, it's probably a very record day. It's been a while, and I'll let Dick or even Brian comment on the magnitude of flooding we've had as compared to from a historical perspective, but definitely it's up there as a top historical flood event for sure.
Is that for Calcasieu Parish?
For Calcasieu Parish, yes. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Appreciate you, Andy. We'll hear next from Dick Grimion, Emergency Preparedness Director for Calcasieu Parish, on various items relating to this emergency.
Thank you, Brian. Earlier today, Calcasieu Parish Police Jury President Brian Abshire signed an emergency declaration for Calcasieu Parish for this event. One of the components of that, and Andy just talked about the river flooding, we are in consultation with the sheriff closing the Calcasieu River from the saltwater barrier northward. The river has potential to rise very rapidly. We're already having complaints about people, joyriding and things like that. The sheriff may comment on that later, but just wanted to let you know that. We're getting calls about help for various things, help with their flooded houses and things. As of right now, there is no federal declaration, but we will be working towards getting the information to apply for that. Right now, if you have an emergency, call 911. If you need help of a volunteer nature, call 211. And one last thing we'd like you to do, the State of Louisiana GOSEP has opened a portal where you can self-report your damage. This is very important because the amount of uninsured flood homes is going to be part of the determinant of our declaration for the emergency. So you would go to damage.la.gov, damage.la.gov. You can, there'll be a way to report your damages there. And as I said, it's very important because each of those reports we get helps us along on the overall declaration for this event. I think that's my part for right now.
Question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Teresa.
Are there any estimates as far as how many structures, homes and other structures were flooded? And I just want to clarify, obviously, there are some people in wet homes and they don't necessarily need to be rescued, but where can they go if they are, living in circumstances that are just unhealthy?
Well, if they're in a circumstance like that, Teresa, they'll need to call 911, and one of the rescue agencies will go out and assess what their needs are. And as far as the number of houses, and I'm going to let the sheriff comment on this, but what we heard from the sheriff and the mayor today sounds like somewhere between 300 to 500, maybe 600 homes were affected during this event. But the sheriff might have more information on that. Yes, sir.
Just one quick follow-up. Any idea how many rescue operations you all had to do?
I'm going to let the sheriff comment on that also.
We'll go back to an earlier question about the weather level or rainfall level. I believe, Mike, what we were told by the National Weather Service earlier today, that the rainfall amount within a 24-hour period that we experienced yesterday was the third highest on record for Calcasieu, going back to, I believe, the mid-1800s. So the key there is the short duration of the rain. 11 inches or 15 spread over a few days isn't near as bad, but in a 24-hour period, we saw what happened. So That's a good segue to talk about the search and rescue efforts, since y'all had questions on it. And Sheriff Mancuso and his folks have done a great job with this, and he's going to update us on what happened yesterday and some numbers as well. Tony?
Well, I really wish I knew what to say to our citizens right now to give them some encouragement, because they've been through so much the last year. But just hang in there. We're gonna get through this together, and we're gonna fix it. I know some people were just getting their homes back in order, and now they have water in them. So again, my heart goes out to you, and we're gonna pick up the pieces, and we're gonna move on and try to do better and get better each time we learn from each of these events, and we're gonna make it. I promise you, it's gonna be tough, but we're gonna make it. So yesterday. Obviously, we had a busy day. Teresa, to answer part of your question, yeah, we figure best guess estimate is 300 to 500, possibly 600 people were displaced that we picked up. You know, we had over right at 400 calls for service. We did have the National Guard here. Colonel St. Romain is here with us. The Wildlife and Fisheries, Captain Savoy is here. Many of our fire department, Lake Charles Fire Department, were doing rescues. So we, about 11 o'clock last night, felt like we finished as far as, and when I say rescue, it wasn't anybody drowning. It was just people that wanted out of their house and were getting water in their houses. So I don't want to use the term rescue as if we were, getting people in dire straits. Although we did assist Acadian, I think the National Guard and ourselves did, and the Wildlife Fisheries assisted Acadian ambulance in getting some critical patients that were in trouble, whether it be oxygen and needing oxygen and medical emergencies. I think we had around 20 of those that we assisted in that form. So. To get an accurate count right now is just kind of tough, but we're working on that for you. Displaced people, I can't say enough for Trinity Baptist Church last night for opening their doors and letting us bring people there. I think this morning, the mayor and I talked. He actually went over there. We had about 150 people still there this morning. That is dwindling and going down now. I think you asked the question of what people can do, and I think we're working on that right now. Should we have the need for that? We're kind of seeing where that is going right now, whether there's really even a need for that. Brian and his staff are working on that. I think that's what he meant a while ago when he asked that question about, or Teresa, I can't remember which one of you asked that question, but I think we're going to work on that as need basis. Many of our faith-based groups have said they were prepared to help us with that in the need for that. So it's really a matter now of call 211. I think if it's a non-emergency and you are worried about, that is the best resource to call, and that gives us the ability at that point to assess and see what our needs will be. So emergency, life-threatening, you're in danger, call 911. Other than that, call 211, and we'll try to work on those needs for people. But I can't say enough for our partners, the National Guard. They were here. As soon as we called them, they mobilized and got here. They're going to be with us through this ordeal and try to get us through the next few days. I'm confident that we can, handle the future now. But I do want to, if we're finished with this and you don't have any questions about yesterday, I want to talk about tomorrow and the next couple of days of what we're going to have to deal with and what we could deal with. So is there any?
I just have
yes,
one
ma'am.
question. Can you clarify, is it up to 600 people? And if so, how many structures do you think were flooded?
I don't know.
In terms of homes and or businesses?
I don't know that we have a number for structures. I can tell you the number of calls, and I can tell you that, we were going, every time we would go out in one of our vehicles, we were taking, 30 to 40 people per vehicle out and bringing them to Trinity. Now, when they would get to Trinity, some had people waiting for them and they would take them away. So it was very difficult to get an accurate number. And Mayor, I don't know if you have a more accurate number. I'm really guesstimating on basically, for instance, we had and now I'm going to forget the street name, Gene, the street that we had some people in a house. We went there for one family. I say that one family. We got a call from a family about water being almost to the windows of the house. When we get there, there's 10 people in the house, and we ended up taking 20 more from the area. So, we may have gotten a call for 5 people in trouble and wanted us to come get them, but we ended up taking 30 people. In the same token, we would go and pick up people, and there were other people who said, no, we're going to stay here. And they didn't want to leave, and they had water in their houses. So that's their choice. They were not in any danger, but they were having to live in conditions of high water. So it's hard to guesstimate really until hopefully, and Nick, again, Mayor, you can elaborate on this, or Brian, that number that we asked them to call will give us a better and accurate number for that, to get an accurate count of what took place yesterday. I can only go by the call volume that we had and what we didn't sit there and keep count of who we were rescuing. We were more concerned on getting them to the church and getting back out there and getting the rest. Because at one time we had about 190 calls on backlog waiting because we were just getting them back. And, so we cleared that up about 11 o'clock last night, that call volume. So.
Yeah, just to clarify, when you mention those numbers, I think you said 300 to 500. You're talking individual people who you all, not households.
That's correct.
Right, individual people
That's
who you
correct.
all had helped out and brought.
I think there's going to be hundreds of houses that were affected in businesses. I really do. I think there's going to be hundreds. I don't know about thousands, but I think we could reach 1,000. Again, I have no way to measure that at this point. The best way we can do that is for people to call and tell their damage. But I know it's a lot. So, all right, let's move forward to the next couple days because that's critical too. For those that live on the Calcasieu River, basically from the saltwater barrier up, Dick and I spoke this morning. The police jury did a declaration. We have closed the river to recreational traffic. We have no legal authority to close the river to commercial traffic. So keep that in mind for those that get frustrated. Commercial traffic is legally obligated, and we cannot deter that from happening nor stop that from happening. So we have closed the river to recreational vehicles, and we're asking people to respect the people that live on those rivers. The next couple of days, according to the Weather Service, we will have flooding. To what degree, we don't know yet at this point. The crest will depend on how fast the water drains and comes downriver, basically, and how much more rain we get up north. Is that an accurate way to describe it? The more rain we get up north, the more the river's going to obviously flood downstream and hurt us. So that's one issue, the river flooding on the Calcasieu, West Fork, those types of rivers. Those people are used to that. They just need to be in tune to what's going on, stay in tune to the flood stages, and if they need to get out, get out. We're prepared. Normally, we don't have to do a whole lot of getting people out. They're pretty used to that and know when the water rises, they usually get out on their own and do that. Now we have another issue with the Sabine River. From what I understand, the floodgates are opening a little more at Toledo Bend, and with the tides pushing water from the south up, it's causing the water to backlog. So that may be another issue which we've dealt with in the past later on in the week. Again, I want the residents, in the Starks, the west side of Benton, the west side of the parish, to just be prepared and ready. Obviously, we're prepared. We'll come get you, and we're going to help you in any way we can. But just monitor that closely. There's no immediate danger as we speak right now. But I suspect later on in the week we could have a flood event in that area. We're going to cross our fingers and hope that doesn't happen. But, it's Mother Nature, and we just don't have really any control over it. So, but we are prepared for it and ready for that event if need be. So, did I cover everything, Brian? Was that what we talked about? And any of our reporters have any other questions about that? Or okay, thank y'all.
Thank you, Tony. Just to kind of point out the differences here, the word redundancy is important here. Usually you hear that word in terms of computing systems and having backup, and that's critical even in these situations. But there's also redundancy needs in response services. And so the difference in this case, say compared to a hurricane, we're going to have typically a lot more notice. And so the sheriff's office, fire departments, police departments, others, National Guard help a lot with search and rescue But this came on so fast. So a lot of the public facilities we use for sheltering or plan to couldn't be used. And so Tony mentioned it, but we cannot say enough positive about Trinity Baptist Church in this case, who on short notice opened their gym and other areas for what is a lot of people. We also had backups. Lake Charles Civic Center, a portion of their facility could be used, but it had damage too. But the faith-based and non-governmental agencies were critical in this if it had gotten bigger, and let's hope nothing else happens, but we may have a threat again tomorrow. So their role in this is so critical because you never know what your first option is going to be like when this happens, and a lot of this, as y'all know, was down. So thank you, Tony, for all that good information. Let's talk a little bit more about the sheltering side, and Parish Assistant Administrator Dane Boland has been spearheading that for us with a lot of help, and he's going to get in a little more detail about those operations.
Thank you, Brian. I can't say it enough. I think we thank Trinity and our faith-based organizations, but thank them again. You know, we always, Sheriff, they always do a great job. Red Cross stepped up. But again, faith-based, if we don't have them, we probably wouldn't, things would not have gone as smoothly as it did. So once again, thank those folks. I do have some numbers to report. The last 24 hours, approximately 385 people came through the doors of Trinity. Now again, there were more folks that were brought there, but they left once they got to the parking lot. And this morning, as of about an hour ago, we have 122 citizens at the shelter. Their needs are being met. Our citizens are being taken care of. And we're assessing the situation hourly. And so we'll come up with a plan for long-term housing. What that looks like is to be determined, but we'll figure that out as we go out throughout the day today. Questions?
Is Burton Coliseum available, or did it take on any water?
Burton Coliseum is not available. It took on some water. We're actually right now getting the water out, and hopefully it'll be available by the end of the day, if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane. And as with the sheriff, there's so many people you can't name that helped in this, on search and rescue or in sheltering. Dane's reporting on that whole effort, but the volunteers and public and private help is critical. Before we hear from a few of our elected officials, just want to touch on the utilities issue, which of course was so big in both the hurricanes and the winter storm we had. We were more fortunate this time around, and in the city systems, as far as all the cities in the parish, by and large, the water systems, drinking water, and sewer systems are working fine. There have been a few challenges depending on where you are, but I think those have gone relatively well. We all are aware of the importance of the broadband and internet connection for the whole parish and private, public schools, et cetera. And Suddenlink has had some outages, but it is they're reporting that most of those have been fully restored, and there may be an exception here and there, but that should be functioning well across the parish. Entergy did have power outages. I think earlier today it was in the neighborhood of 2,600 structures. I think that number's probably way down by now. I don't have any direct numbers, but that should be solved. If not already, it should be solved pretty soon in most areas of the parish. So that's mostly good news in terms of any utilities. So with that, let's hear from some of our elected leaders. We'll start with Police Jury President Brian Abshire.
Could I just ask?
Oh, sure. You have a question?
We are getting a lot of complaints from people who say that the roadside ditches and the drainage laterals have not been adequately cleaned out since the hurricanes. And I just thought you might want to address it, and possibly some of the elected officials.
I'll briefly mention it. The question or the concerns coming from some residents about debris in the ditches and how it may be hampering our ability to prevent flooding. Let's be clear, there's no question the debris from the hurricanes, especially Laura, is significant. And it will take a long time. All the 2 drainage districts in the parish, the consolidated, have been working hard, continue to. Cities, parish. It's hard for people to understand the magnitude, however, of the job. It will take probably multiple years, certainly more than a year, to clean out drainage laterals in the parish from the storms. Having said that, it definitely creates bigger problems, but it's not from not trying to address it, and it's just, I don't want to say it's an excuse, but I think it's a very good reason where you get this many disaster events back to back. There is just no human way to fix that problem that is bigger than anything we've ever seen. So we acknowledge the problems, know we're dealing with it, and yet in some cases it's not near as bad as it could be. That doesn't make people feel good who are flooding, but we're very aware of that problem.
Well, and some people say that they're frequently told, well, you're on the list, you're on the list. Are these lists available for people to look at so that they have some idea where they might be?
Well, first of all, you have 2 drainage districts, 6 cities, and the parish. So they're all responsible for pieces of the system. I think people learn that by now, and we do work together. I've heard it a couple of times that people don't mean it, but well, it's not us, it's them, it's everybody. And there is no magic list. It's more of they're going to track I know the cities do it, we do it, the districts do it. They track every report. In our case, we have a very sophisticated data collection software that allows us to know everybody who's reported it down to the address. And so you look for patterns and try to determine what's the best way to try to clean that. In some cases, you may think it's right near an intersection when the fact is the problem is 2 miles down a drainage lateral, and it just depends. But there is no certain list that's publicly viewable. That's just how each department handles it. Okay, thank you for the question. Police Jury President Brian Abshire.
Thank you, Brian. I just wanted to let everyone know that our hearts go out to all those who've been affected by the flooding. It's very hard to plan for an event like this, especially when it's expected one thing and then you get 3 times as much rain. So just know that right now we're doing our best to plan for what's ahead of us. But going forward, it's going to be more about recovery. That being said, as we learned in Laura, please verify. Everyone's going to be anxious to start repairs. Please verify licenses and insurance with any contractors that you hire. And if you have questions, the Better Business Bureau has helpful tips on their website. You can always go there to get ideas on how to hire contractors. That being said, let's all stay safe and do our best to prepare and mitigate for what's going to come tomorrow and tomorrow morning. And next up, I believe we have Mayor Nick Hunter.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Want to let the public know that I've spoken with the governor a couple times over the last 24 hours, and he has offered any help that the state can provide. And also even had a call from a representative from the White House this morning asking how we were doing, and certainly offering any help they could provide. I took the opportunity to remind them that we are still waiting on disaster aid in the wake of Hurricane Laura, and we will see how that message was received. I've got to give so much thanks to our city employees who performed miracles yesterday, working in partnership with multiple other agencies. The sheriff and I just confirmed, to our knowledge, there was 0 loss of life in Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish yesterday, and with what we went through, that is an amazing feat. Our partner agencies, National Guard, State Fire Marshal, LDWF. We even had some assets from New Iberia Fire Department that came and assisted. It was just amazing to see that work and that partnership, and also just citizens helping each other, neighbors helping neighbors, and it was something to see yesterday. It was an unfortunate thing to see, and it's unfortunate that we are yet again having these conversations and discussions. I've got to reiterate what has been said a couple times, but ladies and gentlemen, what happened yesterday was the third heaviest rain event in the city of Lake Charles's history. The third heaviest rain event in the city of Lake Charles's history. It will eclipse what we traditionally consider a 100-year event. And it is becoming a misnomer because we are experiencing these 100-year events much more often than every 100 years. What we experienced yesterday was more rainfall than Hurricane Laura. In certain parts of the city of Lake Charles, more rainfall than Hurricane Delta. I am very confident that we will have more structures in the city of Lake Charles that flooded yesterday than flooded during Hurricane Laura and Delta combined. I've spoken with nonprofits, many of whom who are in Lake Charles 365 days a year. They stand ready to provide every ounce of help they can. I've spoken with some nonprofits and faith leaders who are stationed outside the city of Lake Charles, who were here in the immediate aftermath of Laura, and they plan on mobilizing and coming back to help. I can't thank them enough. Trinity Baptist Church did a wonderful job, and I thank them. I was able to visit this morning. It was very professionally run. I want to thank the sheriff's office for having some deputies there, and it was a great partnership between the police jury, the sheriff, Trinity, and of course the city of Lake Charles stands ready, and we were ready last night in case Trinity Baptist Church did become over capacity. As we stand here today, we are roughly 265 days post-Laura, and I will not say that what happened yesterday would have been prevented had we already achieved a supplemental disaster package from Washington, D.C. I believe that is a false statement, and I'm not going to peddle false statements because it might be politically expedient. But I will say what happened yesterday has got to be a wake-up call to Washington, D.C., that Lake Charles and Southwest Louisiana is languishing right now. We need help. We are going to do our part. We are not sitting on our hands. We're going to help each other, but there is a finite amount of financial capital in this community. There's a finite amount of human ability in this community, and the enormous magnitude of what has hit us in the last 14 months, the words unprecedented, historic, unthinkable, unfathomable, they just don't seem to properly articulate what we are going through anymore. And so we absolutely deserve and need the proper and commensurate federal response to what we have gone through. We have not received it yet. 265 days post-Laura, and we have not achieved what happened 10 days post-Hurricane Katrina, what happened 34 days post-Hurricane Andrew. And I am tired of getting pats on the back and saying you're doing a great job, but help is on the way. There are people in this community who are suffering, and they need help. And I'm asking and pleading with federal agencies, our president, our Congress, to use bipartisanship right now to make something happen for this community. President Trump and the 116th Congress had a chance to act, and now President Biden and the 117th Congress have a chance to act. Again, I will not say that had they acted 3 or 4 months ago, what happened yesterday would have been completely preventable, but it will take a local, a state, and a federal coalition for this community to harden our assets, to become more resilient, and the effects that we are feeling right now from these monstrous events are wreaking havoc upon systems designed by man that were designed 40 and 50 years ago to deal with these events once every 100 years. And we are dealing with these events in some cases, multiple times throughout the last 12 and 14 months. So again, it's not any rosy picture to paint, and I know that I wish that it was an easy answer. I wish that I had a magic wand and we could go out there and say, we've got to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow and we can fix this immediately. It is not that easy. It is not that simple. And so again, it's going to take a local, state, and federal coalition to improve this situation and to mitigate these effects from happening. If we continue to receive these types of weather events with the ferocity and the frequency, again, it is going to take more than what Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish can muster locally. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
what are the primary needs that you hope federal aid will address? I'm wondering if it's housing and infrastructure. And sometimes when you talk about federal aid, you're talking, primarily about infrastructure and stuff. To what extent are you hoping it will address the housing needs of so many people?
Well, it's all of the above. And in the aftermath of what happened yesterday, certainly drainage infrastructure is on the top of everyone's minds. But I still believe housing is our number one issue and number one need from the federal government. But it's all of the above. And those supplemental disaster relief dollars can help with those issues. They can help fill that gap between what people have right now with what insurance gave them and what it's actually costing to fix their home. They can help for this community to improve our drainage assets. And so it's all of the above.
We're also getting requests for TARPs. I know the roof program, it has ended, but people are asking for TARPs.
That's a good question. I can follow up with you on that. We will check with FEMA.
And just to follow up on what was discussed before, Mayor, I know you were saying hundreds of homes or structures got some kind of flooding or water damage. Do you have any more specific idea this morning? I know they're saying it's kind of hard to put a number on it so far, but
It is, and we're still really in the thick of assessment, so it is early to give a solid number. I am very comfortable saying that we will have more structures flood from yesterday's event than happened with Laura and Delta combined. Now, I'm talking for the city of Lake Charles. If you expand that out beyond the city of Lake Charles, that statement may not be correct, but more structures will have flooded yesterday from Laura and Delta combined, I believe. I believe that number is at minimum 400 to 500, and we should have a firmer number as the days go by.
and yeah, I wasn't here for Laura and Delta. Do you know how many flooded there in the city for Laura and Delta? About?
Well, it was less than 400 or 500. It was close to 200 or 300 for Delta. We actually had more flooding for Delta than we did for Hurricane Laura in the city of Lake Charles. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we ask Mayor Danahay to come up, just a couple of updates. Entergy is now reporting that they are down to about 230 customers without power, so that number is much lower than I mentioned earlier. Also, this has to do with the police jury. The Calcasieu Parish Planning and Zoning Board meeting, which was scheduled for tonight, has been canceled due to the this flood event and unknown weather coming, and the Calcasieu Police Jury meeting that it was scheduled for this coming Thursday, the 20th, has been canceled as well. Both of these will be rescheduled for next week, and that will go out in an immediate notice probably later this week. We are appreciative of having Mayor Mike Danahay from Sulphur with us today, so we'd like to hear from him.
Thank you, Brian.
lent our high water vehicle to the sheriff's efforts, and we went out last night, our police department did, and did some rescue there. Actually picked up a principal and some students very late last night from one of the middle schools and took care of their needs. We appreciate that. We're going to continue to do that. Our first responders, our police and fire will be on alert, or are on alert, and will be throughout this event, so that anybody that needs any emergency assistance, they'll be there for them. We also have had our employees out in the last couple of days cleaning all our drain basins in the city of Sulphur to aid in any drainage setup. At 1551 East Napoleon, the corner of Napoleon and Beggars Parkway. For anybody who wants to be able to come and get sandbags, make sure you bring a shovel. That's not provided. So anything of those that need will be there for you. Besides that, we're just anticipating this rain event, of course, and that we will do everything possible for our citizens to be able to help them through this situation. Thank you. Yes, by all means.
A couple of things. I was wondering if you had more details on the middle school, how long they had been there for. Is that students and teachers who had been there all day, pretty much?
They had been there through the evening, as I understand.
Okay, and you know about what time you are?
No, I do not know.
Okay, all right. And do you know for Sulphur about how many homes or structures got some kind of flood damage?
Unfortunately, we did not get the amount of rainfall that Lake Charles did, and so we didn't have any flooding event, any structure that I'm aware of at this point in time that were impacted by the rain. And hopefully we won't. So.
Sorry, what middle school is that?
I'd have to check and find out. But FK White Middle School. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Want to pass on some information to the public for those who may want to donate to this event. Sheriff Mancuso mentioned them earlier, but the local United Way of Southwest Louisiana has a disaster fund for this event set up. Two ways you can contribute, or I think you can also let them know if you can donate labor or things like flood buckets. Disaster fund, if you text the word disaster fund, all one word, to 41444, that is one way you can contribute, or go to www.unitedwaysouthwest or swla.org/donate, or call 211 if you need to do it that way, and it all goes through United Way. At this time, that wraps up our presentation. We currently do not, I'll get to you in just a second, we do not have a public briefing scheduled for tomorrow, but what happens tonight will determine that. Just be, I guess, be looking out for that maybe tomorrow morning at some point either way, but right now we're sort of in a waiting mode. Yes, Teresa.
I was asked to ask about stalled vehicles that are all around. I presume they're the responsibility of the owner to get to them and remove them, or is any government agency or state police or anybody, having some of them towed?
Well, if they're blocking the roadway, yes, it is the responsibility of the owner of the cars. We try to be very patient under the circumstances. We know some people are already stressed out enough, so we're trying to not make a big issue out of it, but they're going to have to come retrieve their cars. If they're blocking a roadway, a local police department, whether it be us, the state police, or one of your local police departments, will have the cars towed to get them out of the roadway. And the owner will have to go get them out of impound, and that's just going to cost them more money. So the easier and the fastest way and the most economical way for them is to retrieve them themselves, get somebody to help them, get a tow truck. But if they are blocking a roadway, then they are going to have to be removed.
If their car is towed, how do they figure out where it is?
Just call one of your local police departments. They will have if they towed it, if they were the ones that had it towed, they will have a record of it. So depending on where you were, if you were on the interstate, like they had several cars that were, on the interstate system that got clogged up on an on-ramp, it may be the state police. If it was in the city of Lake Charles, it could be the city police. If it's on a parish road, it could be us. So just depending on where you were, call your local police department. They should know the answer of if it got towed, where it got towed to. So if we were the ones that called for the tow truck. So, and the only way we would have done that would have been if it was literally blocking the roadway and was a hazard to our citizens. So otherwise, we're trying to be patient and letting them come get them off of medians and things like that. So.
Thank you, Tony. Just a reminder, again, if you, anybody watching this or getting this information did experience flooding, it'd be greatly helpful if you can go to damage.la.gov, and there is a short form to fill out so we can get as most accurate information on what structures flooded. Again, damage.la.gov. For just general information and updates that occur after this briefing, our website at calcasiewparish.gov will put all that on there, and it's a good one-stop shop online for any information. Or, of course, contact the applicable city or sheriff's office, depending on your needs. That will conclude our public briefing today. Please be on the lookout for any news announcements through regular media outlets and on our social media pages. Thank you.